Hey, Kids Cook Real Food. Katie Kimball here for the Healthy Parenting Connector. And I am honored to host Sarah Morgan today. We are going to talk about the buddies in your belly. And you know, here at Kids Cook Real Food, we talk about connection, confidence, and creativity. So today, Sarah is going to connect us with our guts, help us be more confident in our health and what we're putting in our mouths. And she is so creative in how she presents it. You guys are going to love Sarah Morgan. Welcome. Thanks for being here, Sarah.
Thanks so much for having me.
So just official introduction, Sarah is known as the Gene Queen, and her master's in nutrition has been put to good use in formulating a fabulous probiotic for children, which is a question I hear all the time, like what's the best probiotic for my kids? Buddies in your belly. But that's not all. She might as well have a degree in education because the way she can explain health and nutrition, and especially the gut, her specialty, to like anyone of any age is such an accessible manner and so fun to hear. So Sarah, tell us a little more about how you got started in the health field.
Yeah, that's a great question. I have always loved the human body ever since I was a young kid, super fascinated by it. I'd go to the grocery store and I was like the person who loved to like look at all the different produce and like things that were in the grocery store and like, oh, what is that? What is, how does that benefit the body? So I kind of took a more conventional track of planning on going to medical school to become a medical doctor, did my undergrad in biology and chemistry, worked on a neuropeds and trauma floor with a hospital associated with the Mayo Clinic, and really realized like the day-to-day, I was like, man, we're plugging a lot of holes in a wall that's about to cave down, meaning it's a lot of symptom management. And, I saw this system that just seemed a little bit broken, and I was kind of disillusioned, to be honest, about it. But what it did is it really surfaced in me this belief that food is powerful as a tool for the human body to be balanced and well, and it creates a great foundation for us. So that actually started me on this journey of, oh no, I'm not going to take the normal route.
Oh no, you thought?
Well, because it's, you're navigating a lot of things that you don't know how it's going to turn out. You don't know what you're going to do. And I honestly had a lot of no's, a lot of things that I was like, well, maybe I'll do this. I started my master's program in a dietetics degree that, they just weren't teaching the latest science. Not that registered dietitians aren't amazing, but my program, I was like, this just isn't it. So I kind of really had to struggle to figure it out. And eventually found an awesome master's program, learned all the geeky biochemistry like I wanted to. It's kind of when, the field of genetics was coming out. We had the human genome mapped out. So kind of just dived into that and really believe in the power of personalized medicine.
I think that's so special that you could feel that disconnect between health and medicine at such a young age. That's just fascinating. And that you could turn away. I'm sure a lot of your family was like, wait, you're not going to be a doctor anymore? Like, what are you doing with your life? So how did all that come together with your brand now, Buddies in My Belly?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was actually sitting in my living room one evening, and I'm a mom. I had at the time my 2-year-old daughter, and I was thinking like, okay, I've learned about all these really cool things about the human body. And one of the things I learned in my master's program was this concept of what we've discovered being the microbiome, which is 2 to 4 pounds of who we are. That's actually not us when we step on the scale, is the friendly health promoting bacteria that lives mostly in our digestive tract. And it really functions like an organ. It's kind of been this breakthrough in science in terms of human health, because the microbiome regulates all these important functions from, our brain health, our heart health, the absorption of nutrients, excretion of waste. And, I'm sitting here thinking like, this is so important for people to understand. And I want my daughter to get this. So I kind of went on this journey sitting in my living room one night, it's kind of where my mind goes of like, okay, how would I say this to a 4-year-old or a 40-year-old who maybe doesn't have a background in science? So I started thinking, and I'm like, well, these little bacteria really are our buddies, and most of them live in our belly. And I was like, buddies in my belly. It was kind of this like, it totally makes sense. It's simple. The concept like stuck. I presented it to my daughter, Madison. I talked to my husband about it, who doesn't have a background in science. At the time I was in clinical practice. So I kind of talked to a lot of my clients about it, and it just stuck. People were like, this is awesome. So I kind of went on this creative journey of, okay, now I really want to make, I've got the name, and now I want to make bacteria cute and fun. Because for so long we've had this idea that bacteria are bad, they're like scary, we've got to eradicate them, they're all the bad germs. And the reality is most bacteria on planet Earth is actually friendly, and it's actually beneficial not only to us as humans, but to our environment, our soil, animals have buddies as well. So it was like, how do we kind of create this paradigm shift that the population at large can understand in a way that truly promotes health and well-being and creates this ripple effect, right? Where we all have this common language to use around this concept, and we can talk about it and integrate it into our daily lives.
We do need a paradigm shift. I mean, antibacterial soaps and sprays are such a big deal. Like, absolutely, people see germs and all bacteria as the enemy. I think I dropped one, but I've got two of the little buddies here. Dropped
Yes.
one, and I can't find the book because it's like really in our house, right? Like, this isn't like this product sample that I like keep by my desk, right? Like, my kids love these books. The boys, you don't have boys, but the boys talk about how like Biffy's going to help them toot, and they think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
So that's little sneak peek into like the kid way, but we're adults here. So let's talk about, like, how do you explain to adults a little bit about the buddies in the belly?
Yeah. So what I would say is, if you think about your microbiome, which again we call the buddies in my belly, think of it like an organ, right? We have a heart, we have a brain, we have a liver, we have a kidney. They all serve these really specific purposes. But something we really haven't been educated on is this other thing that's not us as a human, but we get it when we're born. Basically, when we're delivered by our mother, we gulp down our first baby buddies. And I think it's still fun when you're an adult to like see these are our little baby buddies. Okay, this is a full grown buddy compared to the baby buddy. This is Streppy. But what happens is they colonize in our GI tract. And as we mature as newborns, infants, kids, all throughout childhood, our microbiome, or the buddies, are actually maturing with us, and they regulate even things like our immune system function. So we have these macrophages that exist in all of our cells that are part of our immune system. And we know when we're children that our microbiome, the buddies, actually teach these macrophages good manners of how to respond properly. It's like hug and like shake somebody's hand and be nice, don't slap or bite or, do all these mean things. Well, that's actually training the immune system how to respond properly, right? To things that like, hey, you should, like blow up this bad germ, or here's a virus, like boom, boom, immune system goes after it. But we should also be able to tolerate certain things, right? Where the immune system doesn't overreact. We don't want it to underreact. We don't want it to overreact. And we kind of think about our immune system like our police force in the body. So the buddies teach our immune system how to function properly. Another thing is our digestive health. So we spend $100 billion a year as Americans on digestive problems. So our buddies are a huge player in how our digestive system functions in terms of anti-inflammatory actions, motility, how, our little GI tract kind of squishes and moves things through our GI tract and into our colon and out in the form of a bowel movement. Our buddies actually make enzymes, and they actually make different nutrients like B vitamins, vitamin K. They help us digest our food. They reduce allergies, which is, a big deal, especially for kiddos today. But I say that to adults too. I'm like, if you're struggling with a lot of allergies, you've had allergies creep up into your life, you want to think about the buddies in your belly. You probably have more bad germs than good buddies, and there's changes with your immune system response that's kind of tipping it towards more of an allergic type place. Also our mood. So we've got this freeway system between our digestive tract, or our belly, and our brain. And it goes two ways. So the communication from what's happening in our brain goes down to our belly. This can be how we feel, like, nervous, the nervous belly. I call it the nervous poops, when you get like so nervous, you're like run into the bathroom, about an event. But the other way around is true as well. So bifidobacterium, for example, this is Biffy, and this is how Biffy actually looks under a microscope. He's got like the little fun Y shape to him. So we try to keep, the science very serious. But bifidobacterium actually makes different neurotransmitters, one of them being GABA. And GABA is this like the brake to our car. So it's the calm, cool, collected. We've got a gas pedal, which is glutamate and some of our stimulatory neurotransmitters like adrenaline, dopamine. And then we want to apply our brake as well. So you can feel anxious, you can feel depressed, you can have issues sleeping when you don't have a good balanced microbiome. You don't have enough buddies that are producing some of these things that impact your entire system at large. So that's another one. Really interesting, heart health. There's some certain strains of buddies that have actually been studied now to reduce cholesterol, reduce inflammatory factors like C-reactive protein, which we can measure, which we know is a risk factor for cardiovascular disease. And even like the breakdown of your cholesterol panel, some of these different strains of probiotics specifically help our heart. So the song, like the hip bone's connected to the leg bone, like everything's interconnected, is very true. And we kind of think of the buddies at the center of a lot of that. And also like liver health, skin health, or some other things. Weight, how much we weigh. The buddies play a huge role in our metabolism and what we weigh. So they took, this was really interesting, they took sterile mice, meaning these mice didn't have any buddies in their belly, kind of like when a baby is born, even though that's kind of a little bit controversial now. And they would give them bad buddies. They, gave them like the inflammatory bacteria, and these mice gained weight. They had all kinds of different health issues. So we know when you have good buddies in your belly, you actually are a healthier weight as well, because they're regulating so many of these different metabolic pathways. So I don't know if that's a good summary of the buddies for adults, but if you think about something with your life and your health, I would argue that you could actually connect any of that to the buddies. Like we know we have a microbiome, we have buddies in our lungs, we have buddies in our breasts as females, we have buddies in our eyes, like our eyeball literally has a microbiome. So they're everywhere. Our skin has a microbiome, and they're really regulating so much of these aspects of our health or disease.
They're truly the epicenter. Like the more you're talking, I'm just thinking, gosh, it's like any complaint, like you said, any complaint or health issue anyone can have. Let's look at that balance. And I've always known that the microbiome affects the immune system, but your analogy is so great that they're basically the teachers. They're like the training force for the police force, which is your immune system. Amazing. And yet here we take antibiotics. We would never take another organ medicine. We'd never take an anti-heart medicine or an anti-brain medicine, but we take medicines that kill, our microbiome. The whole time you're talking, I'm like, okay, what do we do though? What do we do, Sarah? Let's dig to the practical. What can busy parents especially do with this information to foster their kids' gut health?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things we can do to take care of the buddies. And here's what I'll say. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I've blown up my buddies throughout my life with everything I've done, right? Like, oh, I've made so many mistakes. I'm here to say, like, there is always hope. And here's a really cool thing that's based off of the Human Microbiome Project. It's this ongoing research project where we're learning all these amazing things about the microbiome since we've kind of discovered it, and like, wow, it's connected to all this important, health and wellness issues of humans at large. You can change your buddies in as short as 24 hours. So what you eat and the way you live dramatically impacts what's in your belly, okay, in a good way, right? Also in a bad way, right? If you have a day where you're like, I'm going to pound a bunch of sugar and stuff that's like not so awesome, it doesn't mean you can never have it. You kind of beat up the buddies, is what I like to say. It's like maybe the bad germs are kind of taking over the neighborhood a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
You
That
know,
would
so
be where people say sugar depresses your immune system for 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever it is. It has to do with hurting the buddies, not giving them good food at that point, right?
yeah, absolutely. And we can see, the bacteria, like they replicate and grow very quickly. And so they're dependent upon these different food sources, right? And those are what we say prebiotics, which are food for the buddies, or the things we eat can also feed bad bacteria, bad, yeast that can overgrow. So yeah, it's a very dynamic system. And what I would say about that is, in a good way, you get to be in the driver's seat. So in terms of like, what do we do to take care of our buddies? One, like, remember, like, your buddies are your best friends for life, right? Like, you always want them by your side. So whenever you're making choices about your lifestyle, not just your diet, think about like, oh man, I got these buddies that are with me. Like, I want them to take care of me. Adults, another big thing I mentioned, like brain health, but we now know like Parkinson's, a lot of neurological issues actually start with more bad germs and buddies in our belly.
Wow.
So a lot of these like neurological issues too, I would even argue like dementia, Alzheimer's, there's a connection with our microbiome. That's huge. So what do we do to take care of our buddies? So first thing is, you want to eat a whole food diet. And I know you talk about this so much, but again, the types of food we eat determine if there's buddies or bad germs living in our belly. And the buddies love plant foods that are rich in fiber. So this is where I always like to define like terms. So a prebiotic is a food for the healthy bacteria. And this can be fiber that we find in a lot of our different plant foods, as I just mentioned. This can also be polyphenols, or these other compounds in plants that give it the color and even some of the different taste profile. Those actually help to kind of shape and shift what buddies or bad germs live in your belly. Okay, so those are prebiotics. Probiotics are like the actual living, friendly bacteria. And then postbiotics are the things that the probiotics are making. Okay, so our buddies, like, they're not just hanging out there, like, living, not doing anything. They're very active, and they're making all kinds of different things. So they make, again, B vitamins, they make neurotransmitters, they make things called short chain fatty acids. And all these postbiotics are actually signaling molecules that impact our biochemistry. And that's how the buddies are connected to all these different health issues, right? For example, it's not like the buddy's like, hi, I'm going to regulate your heart health. Like, my name is Biffy and I'm going to do everything for your heart. But Biffy's going to make things that send signals to your cardiovascular system that keep it in a healthy place. And that's the postbiotics. So when we have good probiotics, we're changing all these signals that happen in the body in a positive way. So again, fiber is good. And this is from the Human Microbiome Project. We want 25 different species of plant foods a week. Okay.
Variety is key.
Variety is
key. I
key.
can get my kids to eat carrots every day, but 25 is a big number.
Yes, it is. And it is and it isn't. So like, my thing is, make a stir fry, like something super practical, right? You can get like 12 to 15 different plant foods and all those different categories in one stir fry. And you start small, right? Like, if you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't grow up eating vegetables, I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even know like half the stuff in the grocery store when I go to the produce section. It's like, well, grab something that you're like, I don't even know what this is. Bring it home and we'll identify it, right? Like, ask somebody or look at the sign of what it is, and then try to make something with it, right? Like, something most of us, I think in America, we don't think about adding to our stir fries, like bok choy, right? Like bok choy is awesome, like baby bok choy, throw it in there. You get one more thing of diversity, just onion, garlic, and ginger right there. Those are 3, right? And you can like throw that in your stir fry anytime. So I'm just giving some examples so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And then brown rice, like if you want to serve that with your stir fry, There you go. Like you're already building on, you know, some of the things like broccoli, peppers, other things that you'd add in there. So
Cool.
we
I was gonna
actually,
I was gonna
yeah,
ask if like whole grains counted, and nuts and legumes
absolutely.
too. So
Yep.
when
All the plant
and
foods.
fruits and yeah. So
Yep.
now 25 doesn't seem so scary if it's
Exactly.
not just the vegetable family. I
Yes.
mean, we
It's
want
not
to,
just the vegetables. Yep.
yeah, and we want to hit
'Cause
vegetables hard, obviously, but
yes.
we
So
want
then
to
that's actually, I'll show this, and we
nice.
have this on our website, but we have a Buddies in My Belly food plate. And so what I tell people is, you know, when you're looking at mealtime, you want about half of your plate to be vegetables. Then you want another fourth of it to be a good protein, and then another fourth of it to be some type of whole grain. And we actually have, or beans, legumes, and we actually have some suggestions there. So it could be like rice, potatoes, oatmeal, quinoa, black beans, hummus, edamame, like whole grain bread. We don't differentiate gluten, dairy, all those things. You know, obviously people eat differently, but here's a
Mm-hmm.
really interesting fact too for the adults. If you have good buddies in your belly, you're more likely to be able to tolerate a large diversity of food, and that's the goal. So there's certain strains of lactobacillus, this is lacti, and bifi, that help us digest and tolerate dairy and gluten.
Mm.
So just one of the things I'll throw in there of like our lack of being able to tolerate some of these foods for me always comes back to how are the buddies doing? And how are the buddies doing from, you know, a long time ago from your childhood, right? So food is one thing, sleep is another thing. We know people who sleep well have better buddies. The buddies get tired too and they need rest, okay? So
Mm.
it's very important for you and for your kids to get proper sleep and have a good sleep cycle. So, you know, and then if you have issues with your sleep, one of the things I encourage people to think about is actually think about your microbiome, because if you have a disruption with your buddies, it can impact how well you sleep.
Now, you just talked about buddies from your childhood. You've told us we can change them in 24 hours. So I have to jump in here and say,
Yeah.
if we're, you know, let's say like my daughter, she's 11, and dairy bothers her stomach. We
Mm-hmm.
just discovered this like a year ago. So for that and for things like, you know, sleep issues, what are we talking? Like take one probiotic capsule and it might help in 24 hours, or is it more of a long-term game?
Great question. Yeah. So this is when we're reshaping our buddies. We're kind
Mm.
of shifting the whole atmosphere of who's living, you know, in the neighborhood. It can take some time.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning there are scenarios where, like with your daughter, I would absolutely say if she's sensitive to dairy, then it's something you probably want to pull out for a period of time. But my point is, I don't ever think people should be off of a food forever unless it's identified as like an IgE food allergy, right? Where you like have anaphylactic reaction, you get hives, that kind of thing. Or you have an autoimmune condition where your immune system is activated from that food, like celiac disease. But again, I would even say if we look at the research, people who have poor microbiomes and they have the genes that are set up for celiac are more likely for that to actually be triggered.
Wow.
Because celiac can be something that comes on any time, right? It's not like you're born with it and it's activated the moment you're born. So great point. Along with the, you know, a probiotic that you can take as a supplement, all
Mm-hmm.
these lifestyle factors are huge too, right? For reshaping the buddies, like have a buddies makeover is the goal, right? Like
Nice.
that's what we're going after. So number 3 is water. I always say the buddies get thirsty too. A big point here is we chlorinate our water and we kill the bad germs, but that also kills the buddies. So
Mm.
every single day when you're going to drink chlorinated water, like all throughout your day, you're kind of like, you know, sucker punching some of your best friends in the process. So a simple thing you can do is just filter your water. My favorite is purification, which takes out all total dissolved solids of different types of contaminants that can hurt the buddies. If you look at EWG, the environmentalworkinggroup.org, you can actually look up your zip code and figure out what's in your water, the quality of your water. And that's where I would say like filtering versus purification, where you make that decision.
Mm.
But water and the quality of your water is really important for your buddies. Movement. we are meant to move as humans, and the buddies like movement too. So the more we move throughout our week, it doesn't have to be like super intense exercise, but even walking, getting outside, those people have better microbiomes. So movement's really important for kids and adults. And the fifth one I would say in terms of like, what do we do is look at our stress. Okay. And it doesn't mean we have a stress-free lives, because that's not a reality. But it means we look at our stressors, we eliminate things that are, we don't have to have in our life as stressors. And we figure out ways to become more resilient to stress. And I would say this to, speaking to adults, like, think about your kids here, because kids have a lot of stress in modern world too. And stress, comes from our mind, it comes from our emotions, it comes from physical things like lack of sleep or an injury, chemical things we mentioned like chlorine. Another one is pesticides are a stress to your buddies. There are certain pesticides that actually, like, again, just, knock the buddies down on the ground. They just beat them up. It's not a good thing. We have some really good data on that. And then another one that I'm really passionate about that creates stress is medications. There's different medications that, are kind of common medications. You mentioned antibiotics. That's kind of like a nuclear bomb going off in your gut, right? We know it takes about a year to re-establish your buddies after a course of antibiotics.
Wow.
So you really have to be diligent. I'm not anti-antibiotic, right? Like, they save lives. There's definitely times you use them. I've used them in my life, but we overprescribe. So you want to be careful, right? And very diplomatic of like when you use them. Steroids are another one, right? There's so many kids who have inhalers. They have breathing treatments for different reasons. And that's a big category too, that really is a stress to the buddies. Or reflux meds. That we'll even put like babies on that are only intended for really 14 days that they should be using them. And, they change the pH of the GI tract, which shifts the whole neighborhood environment, and you have more bad germs and buddies, and you have lower nutrient absorption for these babies, right? Like, they can be like a couple months old. So we've got helps the buddies, hurts the buddies chart on our website. We can link that, but it lists out a lot of these different things. We have the Buddies food plate. We have snack sheets. We have a Buddies e-cookbook. We have all these tools that you can take and utilize. So literally day one, you can start your Buddies makeover. And every step that you take is a positive step towards better health.
Yeah. What I love about all of this is that everything that's good for the buddies, it's like all the stuff that people say is good for our health. Right.
Yeah.
Which is the whole point, right? Because the buddies are the epicenter of our health. It's just a different lens, just a different way of thinking about it. How can we keep our buddies healthy instead of just what do we need to do, to stay healthy? When it comes to kind of populating the good buddies, whether it's after antibiotics or just if you're wondering, like, gosh, I don't know, I've never really focused on this with my kids, is like a supplement or the food we eat more important, or how's the symbiosis there?
Great question. So, biggest point takeaway, you can never supplement yourself into good health. So you have to focus on lifestyle and those 5 things. If you're going to focus on those 5 things, those are going to be the things that take you the furthest on your journey. And then in terms of, like prebiotics, we know even with how they're developing infant formulas, the infant formulas that come out, fructooligosaccharides are a type of prebiotic that models what's in human breast milk. Those are the type of prebiotics that are in a mama's breast milk that shape the microbiome or these buddies positively. So again, go back to those 5 things. Those are the biggest. And then you can also eat probiotics in your diet. And that would be the first place I would go. So that's, foods like fermented veggies and kimchi and kombucha and kefir and miso and tempeh and yogurt, especially if you make it yourself. I would say don't depend on the commercial kinds of yogurt to get like probiotics. It's just, they're not really, the buddies are kind of like dead on arrival at that point. But you know, and then there are probiotics. Probiotics are really important. There are situations I would say you should use them. My opinion that I would say is supported by research is the most important time to use probiotics and prebiotics is in childhood. So if your baby is born as a C-section, just for example, we know that baby doesn't get the population of the good, you know, buddies in the same way that a vaginally delivered baby gets. They get more of like the buddies or bad germs that are in like on the skin and in the OR, right? They don't get that same thing. So simple thing you can do if you're a mama, you have a C-section baby, is what is standard of care in Europe. You say, give me the little sponge. They swab mama's vaginal microbiome, and then they swab on the baby's mouth, nose, and ears. So you get that first dose of some of those good buddies. Another really interesting thing from a Swiss study, they found that what surprised the heck out of the researchers, women who have C-section babies don't have the same prebiotic content in their breast milk as women who deliver vaginally, which they were like, whoa, we did not expect to discover this. So there's actually even the physical process of birthing your baby triggers the type of content of prebiotics in your breast milk. So that doesn't mean like breastfeeding isn't amazing if you've had a C-section baby, but I would say in that scenario, because it's almost like this double whammy, please start your babies on probiotics like right away when they're born. Huge, huge important thing. Then throughout childhood, after antibiotics, if you're on certain medications, if you're like, wow, I've really beat up my buddies with my lifestyle, I have like some active issues going on. You want to use targeted probiotics, and we've got a really good resource called How to Pick Out a Probiotic. There's a lot to it. It can be complicated. So we broke it down into like 5 things to look for people. And that's something we can link to as well, because you want to make sure your probiotic is strain specific, just one thing, where they're actually identifying the type of probiotic, because our bacteria vary in their genetic information by about 25% between strains. And that means the type of action they have for you as a human positively varies greatly. So the probiotics are just very unregulated. I learned a lot as I was formulating our stuff over like, I don't know, it was over 12 months. I had to dig to find like the best source probiotics. I'm like, these are going to be used by kids. Like they have to be top notch.
Yeah, man, this research about birthing, it really is all connected. It's not just the hip and the leg bone. It's all so connected.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. We, as Americans, I think we're getting the hang of like, we need probiotics, but it's another pill to pop. It's another yogurt, God forbid, to pack, right? So we've got to be thoughtful and cognizant. And I'm incredibly excited to go read your 5 ways to pick out a probiotic, because we just kind of, in our house, we just kind of like rotate them. Not always that well though. So I think it'd be fascinating to look at my different people in my household and say, well, who might need what, and really see, you know, what makes a difference.
And even the buddies, I will say just really quick as you say that, bacteria, even the friendly guys, are competitive, kind of like siblings can be competitive. And a big point I make is you want to make sure the probiotics that you're picking out have been studied for strain to strain interaction. It means, does this lacti and this biffy actually get along, or are they going to compete with each other and kill each other and kind of, you know, like evict each other out of the neighborhood, so you don't really get as many benefits? So I would argue these like 40 strain, 50 strain, you know, 80 strain, it's like, well, if those bacteria haven't been studied for how well they interact and are they nice to each other or not, it might not actually be the best thing for you.
Sure, it could be an expensive capsule of nothing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if we want our kids to eat these 25 different plant foods every week, we know that here at Kids Cook Real Food, we talk a lot about how getting kids involved in the kitchen increases their likelihood of eating and increases their investment, you know, in their dinners at the table. And so that's, of course, my like hot tip of the day is just, you know, as we are working so hard as parents to keep our kids healthy, we've got to get our kids involved as well, both physically in the kitchen and, you know, intellectually, like talking about all these things. Show your book again Sarah, because it is a fun book. I mean, it's not Piggy and Elephant, but my kids will actually ask to read it, right? It's not just like a textbook made to be fun. It's a fun book with information included. It's super cute. So I love to leave parents with a message of hope because it can
Yes.
feel overwhelming. So if you can encourage parents in one way or share a success story, what do you want us to remember today?
I think the biggest thing I would say is get the Buddies book, read it with your kids, and start talking about the concept throughout the day. It's amazing how kids get it. Like my daughter was in the grocery store not that long ago without any prompting. She's like, Mommy, that's good for the buddies. Mommy, that's bad for the buddies.
Aw.
And, it's like, and then she told me the other night, she's like, oh, Mommy, I ate a lot of sugar today and I don't really feel so great. She goes, I think the bad germs are kind of, there's more of them in my belly and it's not so great. So what's so cool is the concept gives us as a family this common language. And the back of the book, the book is all about how to feed the buddies and take care of them so they can take care of you. And we're all about actionable next steps. So we actually have, just to show, we have this food chart that's actually, you can tear it off, put it on your fridge, and kids get to check off the different colors that they're, eating of the rainbow in ways that they're taking care of their buddies. So everything about what we created is to try to make it easier for you and integrate it as a family unit. So there's always hope. And here's the other thing I tell parents, your kids are super smart. Like when you introduce this to them and they get it, you're going to be blown away by the things they ask and they assimilate just throughout the day.
I love it. And I think it's so nice that it's this whole concept of taking care of your buddies detaches it a little bit from that. There's like a lot of stigma again around having conversations about how to be healthy. It's like, oh, we don't want to make kids feel stressed out. We don't want to create orthorexics who worry about every, morsel they put in their
Yes.
mouth. And so it's like this separator almost where it's not just us being healthy for ourselves, it's taking care of our buddies so they can take care of us. I think it just creates a wonderful, like you said, common vocabulary and just a new lens to look at the world. So fabulous.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I've been taking notes on like all sorts of things we need to link to on your site and a couple on mine. This was a great interview. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, come on back next week, everyone, for another episode of the Healthy Parenting Connector, where we connect experts who have the information you need to raise truly healthy kids. I'm Katie Kimball for Kids Cook Real Food.